Hello and welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture we are going to learn about adding the Firebase UI dependency as well as making the add button functional. So if you actually move ahead to the main menu, which is this menu right here, we have added this button right here. So in this lecture we are going to learn how to make this button functional. But even before doing that, what you need to do is that you do need to add one more dependency, and that is the Firebase UI dependency. So Firebase UI actually allows Firebase to interact with the different UI elements, so you do need to add that dependency. So what you need to do is that you need to go to the Gradle file right here, and right over here you need to add this dependency, which is com.firebaseui::firebaseui database 0.4.4. So once this dependency is added, you could click sync now, and it should be successfully added to your app. Now once this thing is done, let's go ahead and start designing the functionality of this icon right here. So if you actually move to the text view of this, as you could see, the ID of this is add icon. So whenever you actually want to make the items in the action bar functional, what you need to do is that you need to go to the main activity, and here we already have some kind of code which allows us to define what happens when you click some particular item. So we will just copy this ID from here, which is for the add icon, and here we will type in if the ID, that means if the ID of the item clicked is add icon, if that thing happens, and that should actually be r.id.add-icon. So if this thing happens, we want to execute something. And also make sure that as we are not using the floating action button anymore, we do need to delete this code right here. So make sure that you delete that code, and once that thing is done, what you could do is that you could start writing code over here. So here what we wish to do is that we want to redirect the user to a new activity when the user actually clicks this button right here. So we will type in intent equals, and make sure to import intent, new intent, that is going to be main activity dot this, comma, and the new activity which we will be creating is going to be called as the post activity. So we will type in post activity dot class, and we have actually not created this activity yet, but we are going to define it soon. And finally you need to type in start activity intent. So once this thing is done, we are good to go. Now the next thing which we need to do is that we need to go ahead and create this post activity. So I'm going to go to app, create a new activity, and that is going to be an empty activity, and let's name this activity as post activity. Click finish, and your activity should be created for you. So the next thing which we need to do is that once you have this activity, let's go ahead and design this activity. So what we will do is that we will go in the activity post method, and as you could see, there is nothing right here right now at the moment. So even before designing this activity, what we will do is that we will check if our app is performing correctly. That is, when we basically click this button, which is the plus icon right here, our application should be redirected to a new activity. So I'm going to just save the code and run this application so as to check if this thing performs correctly. So as you could see, the application is up and running on our device, and when I hit this plus sign, as you could see, now we are redirected to a new activity, which is nothing but the post activity. That means everything is working fine at this moment. So what we will do now is that we will go ahead and start creating the layout for our post activity. So let me just quickly bring up the actual layout of our application and see how it actually looks like. So if you have a look over here, this is what our layout looks like. So in this case, we are interested in designing this particular activity. So in this activity, we have an image button here, and we have two edit text over here, and finally a single button right over here. So what we will do is that we will go to the XML code of the post activity, and we'll start designing it right away. So we'll switch to the text mode and open up the preview window over here. And the first thing which we do is that we make it a linear layout, And then the next thing which we do is that we set up the orientation to be vertical. And once this thing is done, let's go ahead and add up an image button over here, and the layout width of this button is going to be let's say match parent, and the height is going to be, let's say, 250 dp, and I guess that would be quite enough. And we are actually going to set the parameters for this in the upcoming lecture, but for now let's go ahead and create two edit text over here. So we will type an edit text, and the layout width is going to be match parent, height is going to be wrap content, and let's specify some hint here which says something like enter name, and let's create another edit text here which is going to say something like enter description. So this is also going to be match parent and wrap content, and here the hint is going to be something like enter description. Okay, so once we have this thing set up, let's now go ahead and quickly add a button at the bottom. So we'll type in button, and that is going to be match parent, wrap content, and the text on the button is going to be, let's say, submit, and the on click is going to be, let's say, submit button clicked. And as you could see, now the layout is pretty much ready, but if you notice, this layout looks quite boring. So let's go ahead and learn how to make this layout interesting. So now let's go ahead and define the shape of this edit text to make it kind of more stylish. So in order to create a shape, what you need to do is that you need to go to the resources file, go to the drawable file, and here create a new drawable resource file, and let's name this thing as edit shape. Click OK, and here, as you could see, there is a bunch of code already, and what we want to do is that we want to delete everything from here, and instead we want to create a shape over here. So type in the shape tag, and this shape tag is going to contain the entire code for defining the shape of our layout, to define the shape which we want. So I'm going to type in the shape opening and closing tag and define a few things over here. So the first line of code which you want to define in this shape tag is this code right here, which I'm going to paste over here. So this is nothing but the by default required code which you do need to type in, and once that thing is done, you're pretty much good to go. Now the next thing which we do is that we define the shape of this thing. So we will type in shape, and that is going to be rectangle, as we want a rectangle over here. And after this, the next thing which we do is that as you want to make the edit text a little bit curvy, so as you could see, there are small curves over here on the edit text, and it actually makes your user interface look quite good rather than having sharp corners. So let's go ahead and define those as well. So in order to define those corners into your shape, what you do is that you type in corners, close the corners tag, and you define the border radius for each of the following side. So you type in Android bottom left radius, and that is going to be, let's say, 10 dp. So the bottom left radius actually becomes 10 dp, that is this side right here. Now you also need to do that for each and every corner. So we'll type in bottom right radius, that is also going to be 10 dp. Then we do the same thing for the top. So we'll type top radius is 10 dp for the left, and top radius right is also going to be 10 dps. So once this thing is done, we have successfully set up the corners. Now the next thing which you need to do is that you do need to set the border of your shape. So in order to set up the border, you type in the tag which is called as stroke. So close the tag, and in here you specify the width of the stroke which you want. So we type width equals, and let's say this is going to be 0.5 dps. I guess that would be fine. And then you also need to set up the color for this. So we'll type in color, and that is going to be pure black. So that's going to be hash 0, 0, 0, 0, 0 and 0. And the next thing which you need to do is that you also need to define the color for your shape as well. So you type in the solid tag. So we type solid Android color, and that is going to be, let's say, plain white. So that is FF. And then finally close the tag, and as you could see, your shape is now created. and you are able to see each and every property over here. So as you could see, we have a shape and each of the corner is now rounded. So let's see what happens if we try to change some of the corner. So let's say if you want to change the bottom left corner to, let's say, 100 dp. So as you could see, now the corner looks more rounded. So once we have defined the shape, the next thing which you need to do is that you need to attach this shape to the edit text. So for that, what we will do is that we will go over here and we will type in background equals, and we will assign it a path which is nothing but the path where our shape file is actually located. So it's actually located in drawable and edit shape. So we'll type in at drawable/edit shape, and as you could see, now the shape for this thing is actually defined. So we are going to use the same set of code for the next edit text as well. So as you could see, now we have rounded shape for each of them. But if you could notice, now there is no padding at all to either of these things. So what you need to do is that you need to set the padding for both edit text. So we will type in padding equals, let's say, 10 dp. So as you could see, now there is sufficient space. And now let's also add padding to the bottom edit text as well. So now as you could see, there is sufficient padding for both. And now the next thing which we do is that you also need to set up margin for these as well. So that's going to be margin top. So let's say the top margin is 10 dp. And also let's set this margin for the bottom edit text as well. So I'm going to go here, paste it over here, and I'm also going to do the same thing for the button as well. So as you could see, now the things are actually evenly placed. And what you could even do is that if you open up our layout, as you could see, this button actually spans the entire width. So if you actually want to do something like this, wherein you want to cover each and every pixel of your screen, so what you can do is that you could remove this margins from here. And if you remove this, as you could see, now the things actually span the entire thing. So let's assume that you want to make this button span everything, but you don't want to do the same thing with these edit text. Then what you could do is that you could define the margin, which is the left margin and the right margin, as, let's say, 10 dp and 10 dp for the right as well. So let me just type in 10 dps over here. So as you could see, now there is a little bit of space from the left and right for the edit text, but that's not the case for the button. So we will copy this code and paste it over here as well. And now let's basically shift the button a little bit to the bottom. So what we will do here is that we will change the margin to, let's say, 40 dp or let's say 50 dp, and that actually looks quite good. So once this thing is done, we are pretty much good to go. So now the only thing which we need to do is that we need to add an image to this particular image button. So in the next lecture, what we are going to do is that we are going to go ahead and add an image to the image button, and also what we will do is that we will make the image button functional, so that when we click this button, it actually allows us to select one picture from the gallery, and it's going to set this image button to that particular picture. So that's it for this lecture, and I hope you guys were able to understand each and everything which I have explained in this lecture. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.